was this guy named Frederick Ludwig Hoffmann who came over here from Germany, and he was a young man. He was 17, in fact, when he came over, and was a numbers genius. And he hooked up with the Prudential Life Insurance Company, ended up being a vice president. And he married this Southern belle from Georgia who was from a racist plantation family. And so he ran the numbers on black people and found that black people were dying, dropping like flies, more likely to be sick, more likely to die of pretty much everything. And concluded, which was the general consensus at the time among a lot of white people in the South, this is again in the 1890s, that black people were genetically inferior. And in 1896, he published a book called Race, Tendencies, and Traits of the American Negro, in which he lays out all the numbers, and then he concludes that if we simply avoided allowing black people to have any access to health care, that within 2 or 3 generations, the whole race would die out, and that would solve the race problem in America. When Teddy Roosevelt, 1912, proposed a national health care system, people said no because black people will get it. When Franklin Roosevelt proposed a national health care system, it was the same thing. We don't want black people to get it. When Truman tried it in 47, same thing. Don't want black people to get it. We have to figure out a way to keep black people from using Medicare. And the way that they came up with was to have a 20% hole, a gap in Medicare, so that you had to pay 20% of your doctor's bill and your hospital bill, and that would discourage poor black people from showing up at the hospitals. Nearly 100% of the reason why the United States is the only country in the world that doesn't define healthcare as a right and doesn't have any sort of national healthcare system to speak of is because of racism.
This stunned me. That is Thom Hartmann. He is the author of many books, including The Hidden History of American Healthcare, Why Sickness Bankrupts You and Makes Others Insanely Rich. Thom Hartmann, radio talk show host right here on SiriusXM Progress. You can hear him Monday through Friday, 1 to 3? Because you're right before me, I know. Noon to 3, the whole 3 hours. Also, I catch him on Sling, because the video of his show is on
Free Speech TV.
Yes, Free Speech TV. Yep. How did you discover the story about this?
About Hoffman?
Yes.
I was doing. I had cut a deal with my publisher to write a book about healthcare, and so I was starting to do my research and just digging into the history of American healthcare. And he kept popping up, and I was like, not quite as vividly as that clip you just played. So I found his books. I bought a copy of his Race Traits book from the 1890s. I bought it from a used bookseller for a couple $100, and I read it, and it was like, holy crap. And then I went back and started looking for his name in old stuff, going into library. I mean, most of the stuff isn't even online. And he was testifying before virtually every state's legislature. He testified before Congress. He headed up the Association of Insurance Companies. He was the vice president of Prudential. He was the guy who helped defeat Teddy Roosevelt's attempt to have a national healthcare system. He didn't die until the 1940s. In fact, he said that about a week before he died, he said that maybe it was before that. He said something to the effect of, "I'm glad I never lived to see Franklin Roosevelt president," or something like that. But he was an extreme right winger, extreme racist, and he genuinely believed this. Now, he was a very smart man, numbers wise. He was the guy who figured out that there was an association between tobacco and lung cancer, asbestos and lung cancer. He wrote a 700-page book that's still in print about the association between diet and cancer. And he was right on all those things. So when he ran the numbers on black people, he was so blinded by his own racism that it didn't occur to him that what he was looking at wasn't race, it was poverty. And, that was causing all these medical problems and all these other problems, but in poverty and discrimination.
So he was attempting to say that there was something biologically wrong with black people, which is why they are dying, which is why they are in these conditions. So he was trying to prove that, and along the way discovered it was not. And
no, along the way, he never discovered it was not. He went to his grave thinking that black people were genetically inferior and believing that if we could just keep black people from getting health care, for a couple of generations, they will all die up.
I always believed that, racism was a product of ignorance.
No, he's
But
the most deadly kind of racism, because he he came across as a very nice guy. Everybody who knew him thought he was a smart, nice man. He spoke, well of the few Black people that he knew. He wasn't a fulminating, angry, hateful racist. He was a scientific racist. In fact, at that time, it was called scientific racism. And it was considered a legitimate part of science in the 1890s.
I think about the bell curve
Yeah,
in
it's still around.
1980s. Yeah. So I think about all the different ways, the measuring of skulls, the experiments, both not treating and radiation and gynecological and all of this human zoos to separate and to otherize and to dehumanize a group of people so that you can justify all of the horrible things you do, right? Because if they're not quite human, then none of this matters. It's like what I would do to an animal, or not even to a dog, because people love their dogs. How do we, again, I'm asking this question earnestly because my survival depends on us figuring this out, right? I've said this to Barbara Walter, who was on a few weeks ago. She's been studying civil wars the last 30 years. And I'm like, the removal of this grabbing onto whiteness, this aligning with whiteness, but this religion of whiteness impacts my ability to live. So we have to figure out how to get you to not want that as an aspiration, and to see me as the thing that could wipe it out. Because I remember the CCC, I think it was in the 90s, Bob Barr, who I think might be Black. He was out there, one of those people who was passing. They had this chocolate milk theory. Do you remember the chocolate milk theory? If we allow for miscegenation, they didn't use those terms, but the purity of this milk, one drop of chocolate in it, one drop of chocolate will just spoil the whole purity of the milk. It is a drumbeat of that, right? So as we see it play out in real time, you had the anti-miscegenation laws and all this in this country, but now it's deadly. With 400 million guns, you said? It's deadly. Over. It's deadly. And we're not, and I'm saying say this with my full chest, Black people aren't ready for that. Because we're really not even preparing for a race war. We don't want to be in a race. I don't think I want to be in a race war at all. I don't want it. I don't want to be out here fighting people because you are mad because I'm Black. As if all of us are, genetically tied to Africa. We're all genetically tied to Africa. This notion of a master race with recessive genes is biologically stupid, scientifically stupid.
Yep, absolutely. The theory that economics is at the basis of racism is it's easy to punch a lot of holes in that, and a lot of people try to have that theory do a lot more work than it really can sustain. But the fact of the matter is that in societies where everybody has a job and prosperity is generally shared, you find a lot less resistance to integration, to just everybody recognizing the essential humanity of everybody else. And as competition for jobs, as competition for resources, as competition for housing and everything else increases, as people become poorer. And we've seen this now in the United States. When Reagan came into office, 66%, 67% of Americans were in the middle class. Right now, it's 43%. Reaganism has gutted the American middle class, and that goes to the tiki torches. Jews will not replace us. Jews will not pay to replace us with Black people. Us white people with Black people. That was the whole shtick. And what they're talking about is in the workplace as much as anything else. And so, realizing that this is a complex issue and there's multiple factors and a lot of stuff that has to do with race and racism that goes way beyond this. Nonetheless, I think that one of the most important things that we can do to try to bring about a less heated atmosphere in the United States is to rebuild that middle class, is to bring back what we had before Reagan. And now I realize there was an awful lot of segregation. It was, I'm not, one of these
Redlining,
people
and
who's
the New Deal didn't include black folk who were farming
yeah,
or domestic workers
exactly.
until the 70s. So like we weren't part of that middle class. We didn't get a lot of the leg ups that were given to. So even the building of the middle class was still a white venture.
By and large, by and large.
Yeah.
Although, going into the 60s, 70s, and 80s, there was a significant change in that. And, a real measurable change. And then, Reagan put everything in reverse. And so if we can rebuild America in a way that brings everybody along and that has a more general prosperity, it just seems to me that that would be a really important starting point. Because right now, it's the old cliche that, the joke, you've got the billionaire sitting at the table with a black guy and a white guy, and the billionaire's got a huge plate of cookies, and the black guy and white guy each have one cookie on their plate, and the billionaire's leaning over to the white guy saying, "Look out, that black guy wants your cookie." That's what's going on right now. And when we've all got enough cookies that we're not worried about the damn cookies, then we can have conversations. Then we can make things happen.